Good morning, everyone. Good Shavua Tov. We've started Friday, we started a new Masechta, Ma'aser Sheni, and we're now up to Parak Aleph Mishnah Beis, Chapter 1, Mishna 2. Okay. So in the previous Mishnah we discussed, there was discussion about selling Ma'aser Sheni. So now the Mishnah is continuing with a discussion about selling other sanctified sanctified things. Ma'aser Behema, the tithing of an animal. Now, every year, a person must set aside 1 out of every 10 cows, sheep, and goats that were born in his flock that year. The animals that he sets aside are sanctified. If they have no physical blemishes, they are brought as offerings. The Torah has a whole list of physical blemishes that invalidate an animal as a sacrifice. So if these animals have none of those blemishes, they are brought as offerings. You, the owner of that cow, of that animal, bring it as an offering. If they are blemished and thus unfit to be brought as offerings, they may be eaten as ordinary meat. Okay, if it has a blemish, it's like regular meat. The Mishnah discusses whether animals that are Ma'aser Behema may be sold. That's the discussion now. Can they be sold? So the Mishnah reads, Ma'aser Behema, the tithing of the animal, Ein Meichrin Oisei Tamim Chai. They may not be sold unblemished and alive. Lo balmum chai v'shachet, nor if it's blemished, whether it's alive or slaughtered. The mekatche by isha, one cannot betroth a woman with it. Now, what that means basically is that we'll go through each part, but what the Mishnah is saying is that this animal that's the Ma'aser Behema cannot be sold. It's based on verses in the Torah. Can't be sold. So the first case that the Mishnah brought was it's tamim, it's unblemished, and it's chai, it's alive. Now that means that if it's unblemished and it's chai, it's supposed to be brought as a sacrifice. So at that point of time, you cannot sell it. If it's slaughtered when it was unblemished, you still can't sell it. I mean, if it was slaughtered in the Beis HaMikdash, then you can't sell it. If it was slaughtered out of the Beis HaMikdash, which means it was not slaughtered properly, nonetheless, you can't sell it. The Mishnah doesn't mention it, but it means even if this unblemished animal is alive, even if this unblemished animal is dead, it's slaughtered, you can't sell it then either. And when it's a balmum, when actually you treat it like regular meat, you still can't sell it, whether it's alive, whether it's slaughtered. You still can't sell it. And this is all based on Psukim in the Torah. And then the Mishnah says, if I can't sell it, then I can't use it to betroth a woman. Mekacha means kedushin. When a person marries a woman, when a man marries a woman, so there's 2 steps. There's kedushin, which we translate as betrothal, where nowadays that's what we give the woman a ring. Doesn't have to be a ring. I mean, it can be anything of value. And then after the kedushin is the nesuin, the completion of the marriage. So if you do kedushin with this animal of Ma'aser Behema, you can't do it. You're not going to do it with. You can't do it with that. The Torah doesn't allow. Why doesn't it allow? Because if I can't sell it, then I can't do kedushin with it. Because kedushin is a similar type of transaction. I give value, I get something back for it. So the same way the Torah says, I can't sell this animal that's Ma'aser Behema. I can't use it for kedushin either. So that's the Mishnah first discussion, which is about Ma'aser Behema. Then the next thing the Mishnah discusses is Bechar. The law of Bechar is, the Torah says, a firstborn male cow, sheep, or goat is known as a Bechar. It must be given to a Kohen. If it is unblemished, the Kohen brings it as an offering. If it is blemished, the Kohen eats it as ordinary meat. So a Bechar goes to the Kohen. That's what a Bechar does. The firstborn animal goes to the Kohen. What he does with it depends. If it's unblemished, he brings it as a sacrifice. If it's blemished, he eats it regularly. Now, the Mishnah says, HaBachar, the firstborn animal, Meichrin Oisei Tamim Chai, we can sell it unblemished and alive, Ubalmum Chai V'shachet, or if it is blemished and alive or slaughtered, you can sell it. The Kohen can sell it. And the Kohen can use it with Mekadosh a woman. So here the Mishnah is saying that a Bechar is basically the property of the Kohen. And since there is now, even though before the Maser Behem was also the property of the owner, but there were verses in the Torah that said you can't sell it. Here there are no verses like that. There's no verses that say the Kohen can't sell the firstborn animal. And therefore, being that it's his, he could sell it. Now let's go through each part of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says you can sell the Bachar Tamim Chai if it's unblemished and alive. Now, really, if it's unblemished and alive, then it's supposed to be brought as a sacrifice. So that alone should say that the Kohen can't sell it. If he asks me for a sacrifice, he can't sell it. So why does the Mishnah say that if it is unblemished and alive, you could sell it? And therefore, the commentaries explain that this part of the Mishnah is talking about when there is no Beis HaMikdash. When there's no Beis HaMikdash and the firstborn can't be brought as a sacrifice, then it belongs to the Kohen. And he just eats it. He slaughters it and he eats it. Now, the thing is, though, that since it is meant to be a sacrifice, he can't slaughter it if it's unblemished. He can essentially, interestingly, he can sell it, Tamim Chai. If it's unblemished, he can sell it, but you can't do anything with it because you can't slaughter it because since it's unblemished and it should be a sacrifice, you can't slaughter it. And if you do slaughter it, then it actually becomes completely forbidden to have benefit from, and you have to bury it. But if it's unblemished and it's alive, you could sell it to someone. Just that the only way anybody's going to be able to use it is to have to let it, let's say, pasture and get a blemish, and then you can slaughter it and eat it. But if it's unblemished and alive, and there's no Beis HaMikdash, so I can't bring it as a sacrifice, it's the Kohen's property, and he can sell it. But if he slaughters it, or anybody slaughters it before it's slaughtered, then you can't use it anymore because an unblemished bachar cannot be slaughtered. You have to wait till it gets blemished. Therefore, the Mishnah only mentions Tamim Chai, a unblemished animal that's alive. Even though the unblemished animal it can be sold when it's alive, even though it should have been a carbon, but it's not. Nonetheless, being that it's can't be brought as a carbon, so it belongs to the Kohen. And at this point of time, there's nothing wrong with having any kind of benefit from it, so he can sell it. But were it to be unblemished and he were to slaughter it, then it becomes forbidden to have any kind of benefit from. And then the Mishnah says, Ubalmum. Now let's say this firstborn animal gets a blemish, then fine, live, slaughtered, he can sell it when he wants, because once it's blemished, he can slaughter it. And being that there's no problem selling a bachar, he can use it for kedushin. He can use it to betroth a woman. Now the Mishnah goes back to the laws of Meiser Sheni. As we mentioned before, if the person doesn't want to have to carry the fruits up to Yerushalayim, but rather he wants to transfer the sanctity of the fruits onto money, he can do so. So the Mishnah now gives us some laws about that. A machalal in Meiser Sheni, one cannot deconsecrate. How do they transfer? Well, let's just keep it. One cannot transfer the sanctity of Meiser Sheni al asimain on an asimain. Asimain is a coin that has no image on it. Okay, so it's basically a piece of metal shaped like a coin, but it doesn't have any kind of image on it. So you cannot transfer the money onto that. Nor on a coin that doesn't work. Meaning, let's say it's a foreign coin, and in this place it can't be used. So although it's a coin, it's got an image, and somewhere it works. If it doesn't work here, then you can't. Meaning where you are, you cannot transfer the sanctity onto it. Nor onto money that's not in your possession. So, for instance, a pouch of money of yours fell into the water, sunk down to the bottom of the water. Is it yours? It's still yours, but it's not in your possession. You're going to try to get someone to go dive down and get it, but right now it's in your possession. So, although it's yours, it's not in your possession, you cannot transfer the Meiser Sheni, the sanctity of the Meiser Sheni from the fruit onto that money. We are up to Klal Beis, chapter 2, the laws of Lashon Harah, Gimel, paragraph 3. Now, Yesh Ayman, there are those who say, if you spoke Lashon Harah, you spoke derogatorily about someone in front of three people. Now, remember, yesh, some say this, and this is going to be a long discussion of the Chavetz Chaim. Not in the coming paragraph, meaning it starts in this paragraph and continues in other paragraphs. Although the person who said those words in front of the three, he has certainly spoken Lashon Hara. Nonetheless, were one of these three people who heard the Lashon Hara to say it over to someone else, they would not be transgressing the prohibition of speaking Lashon Hara. Mitam, the reason being, the cave and the shleishim yoidim, once three people know about it, it's for sure going to get around. Okay, assuming we're assuming at this point that these three people, what they heard, they're going to say it, and what they're going to say to is going to say it, and it's going to get around. It's going to get out. And something that's going to be cut, that's going to get out, something that's going to be well known. The Torah does not forbid that because of Lashon Hara. That is this opinion. This opinion holds a matter that's going to get out there in the open. It's going to be known. There's no prohibition of Lashon Hara on that. And therefore, if somebody speaks Lashon Hara in front of three people, the assumption is with three people, it's going to get around. It's going to get around a lot because they're going to spread it, and then others are going to spread it. And therefore, since it's Asur L'Skalos, it's going to become revealed. It's going to become well-known information. There's no prohibition of speaking that kind of Lashon Hara. Now, but there's qualifications, even according to this opinion. This is only to sell it, to tell it in a, so to speak, happenstance way, which means that you're talking, okay? You're meeting someone, and you just tell the person a story. You just tell him this piece of Lashon Hara. But you're not doing it to try to spread it more. Meaning, even if you heard it in front of three people, this is going to get out. If you're saying this now, you're one of those three people who heard it, and you're saying it, excuse me, and you're saying it because of the fact that you want to spread it more to other people, that you can't do. Just because we say that this is going to get out, it's going to get out to everyone. Therefore, there's no prohibition for you to say it, right? There's no prohibition for you to say it, even though you're one of the people who's getting it out. That's only if you just tell it to someone because you're just telling a piece of information. But if your intention is to spread it, then you can't do it. And on the bottom, and then the Chavetz Chaim adds in a footnote, there are those who say even more. Which means, according to another opinion within these opinions, is that even if you don't mean to spread it, it can't be the only thing you're saying. I mean, you can't just be that this is the only piece of information you're telling over to this person. If you're telling him other things, and this gets mixed in, right? Meaning, as part, you're speaking to him about other things, and this now kind of gets included into what you're discussing, then you can do it. But to just intentionally say that alone, even if you're not trying to spread, you got opinions that say you can't do it. And again, this person, that's going back to the person who's spreading it, who you say he can't do it, even if he doesn't say who he heard it from. He just says, this is what I heard about so-and-so. Does not escape the prohibition of speaking Lashon Hara. So this is the first step about what's called the heter, the license of speaking Lashon Hara ba'apei klas, if it was said in front of three people. There is this opinion that if it's people, it's going to get out, and therefore, for any of these three people who knew it was spoken in front of three people, since they know about that, and they know that it is a double scholar, it's going to be something that's going to be spread, everybody's going to know about it. Therefore, for them, it's possible that it would not be considered Lashon Hara if they would be the ones speaking it. Have a wonderful day. Shavua Tov again.